Well, Connor, it may not get better, but some of that hard-driven technology race things that I was just talking about might be simplified in the near future, purely based off of this next news story we have, our second topic of the day. Your first, Penny. Take it away, my friend.
Microsoft introduces AI model to, quote, effectively support human creatives, end quote, within gaming industry. Microsoft announced its next exploration into generative AI this Wednesday with the World and Human Action Model, WHAM, titled Muse, to, quote, generate game visuals, controller actions, or both, end quote. The AI model, created by Microsoft Research Game Intelligence and Teachable AI Experiences, TIEX, in collaboration with Ninja Theory, the developer behind the Hellblade series, using their now defunct game Bleeding Edge as a source of experimentation. Here, there's a little chart. It shows the progression of how the AI has gone based off of how much it's been, how much tests it's based off of.
Subscribe to 2pennygames.news.substack.com.
Quote, it's been amazing to see the variety of ways Microsoft Research has used the bleeding edge environment and data to explore novel techniques in a rapidly moving AI industry, said Ninja Theory's technical director Gavin Costello. From the hackathon that started it all, where we first integrated AI into Bleeding Edge, to building AI agents that could behave more like human players, to the World and Human Action Model being able to dream up entirely new sequences of Bleeding Edge gameplay under human guidance. It's been eye-opening to see potential this type of technology has, end quote. Those supposedly ethical methods of obtaining data from Bleeding Edge, blurry videos showcase generated gameplay based off a second of human gameplay and 9 seconds of controller inputs that improved following training updates as shown above. An Xbox Wire article by Microsoft's corporate vice president of gaming AI, Fatima Kardar, expounds upon the implications of Muse in gaming, specifically in preserving and playing older titles and assisting developers in prototyping their games. Quote, we believe this could radically change how we preserve and experience classic games in the future and make them accessible to more players, Kadar writes. To imagine that beloved games lost to time and hardware advancement could one day be played on any screen with Xbox is an exciting possibility for us. Another opportunity we are exploring is how Muse can help game teams prototype new gameplay experiences during the creative process and introduce new content, end quote. Much of the focus presenting Muse was on their involvement of game creators to ensure developers don't feel, quote, excluded or, quote, caught off guard, or caught, quote, off guard. Other past assurances from companies like PlayStation that AI isn't intended to replace human involvement in game creation has been cautiously received by players and creators alike, as AI and its full implications have yet to be realized. A 2024 Wired article explores how, rather than replacing entire roles with AI, the industry's current use is to, quote, cut corners, ramp up productivity, and compensate for attrition after layoffs, end quote.
Now, if that's true, and we're just cutting corners and trying to sort of bring these budgets down with the use of AI, I have no problem with that. Things that get brought up in your article here, Connor, that I think are interesting, something I haven't really thought of before, is being able to bring old games forward, help with preservation in games through the use of AI, something I never thought of before. The artistry has already been done and created and profited off of. And, you know, I mean, of course, I would always want artists to be profited through residuals and so forth. So I hope that that's something, again, unionize. But that's an element of this I had not thought of before, and I think that totally makes sense. Why can't we, get Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic to run better on modern Windows desktops? And be easier to navigate through with player controls and use buttons that make more sense in the modern era as opposed to when the game was created. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So like Mario 64, can we bring that forward in a way that makes sense and give it controls to where it feels more accessible to play by a modern audience? That's a fascinating topic of discussion, and I would love to see if maybe AI can do that without having to spend X amount of dollars on a remaster that is going to make X amount of money. Cut that production in half, because it's not as we'll say it's not as celebrated as creation of new works, you know. Now, of course, I say all of that with a grain of salt and a lot of skepticism, because it's so easily foreseeable that these executives and these corporate stooges who don't really know anything about the art or really the technology or or the culture of games or care about any of those things could so very easily just say, "Oh, we can get an AI to make a game. All right, cut the development team. We don't need them."
And that's where it really matters with the timeliness of talking about AI right now. So there have been comments. I remember we covered them a while ago from, I can't remember her name, but she was some executive CEO of an AI program. And she was basically saying how there's not much use for creatives anymore. Like AI is intent on replacing that. At the same time, you have PlayStation bosses, definitely the people at Microsoft are thinking about it, of not replacing those creative roles with AI. And I believe them. For now. They're speaking from the perspective of how is this going to be beneficial right now. They're, of course, looking down the line, but as an emerging technology, we don't know what down the line exactly means. And so when it comes to it, as you said, the moment that's on the table of, oh, we can replace creatives, all of these words, these assurances will not matter.
Yeah.
So they only matter right now.
Yeah.
They'll be easily subject to change, especially when a lot of the people who are promoting things like this are not the executives in the boardroom. They at least are, they have some desire to want to make good games or are in love with game creation in some way. But that's not going to win out when you're talking with a company, especially ones that are as big as, Microsoft or Sony or Nintendo even.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult conversation to have with our limited knowledge of things.
Yeah, and I mean the next step, like, I'm hypothesizing how it can be used to help, where it can help, but there's always a double-edged sword to all elements of this. I was thinking in my head, oh well, playtesting and prototyping and new models. If we can use AI to quickly run 1,000 simulations of how this gameplay might work if we make these adjustments and problem solve in these ways, and then now the AI can quickly within, let's say, an hour, say, hey, here's 1,000 simulations. Here's 500 where the game broke. And now the human can go in and fix those 500 situations. But then start taking money out of playtester pockets. Exactly. And for a lot of people in this industry, playtesting is their way in, is their foot in the door through playtesting. Right? So, like, there's always a double-edged sword in all of this. Somebody is going to lose a job because of this. There's no way around it. But maybe we as creatives or we as industry focused people, we can find new pathways for these people. We can find new jobs for them that they didn't have before. I mean, I always think about there's a Neil deGrasse Tyson clip who when he points out
science nerd.
He points out how quickly the horse-drawn carriage industry, which was the main way of transportation, just disappeared overnight and turned into the automotive industry, right? That is kind of where I'm, fingers crossed, best case scenario, thinking that AI is going to happen here, is where it's just like, oh, overnight, we are going to see a different form of artistry and artistry through use of technology because of AI, and suddenly all the old ways that we developed games will fall away, and we're going to be in this new era of development in which we still have creatives, we still have people at the helm. It's just made in a very different way.
Exactly, and in that same vein, talking about prototyping, which seems to be the most positive thing in all of this, there's some negatives and positives to it. Potential negatives and positives, because again, I'm not completely sure of how these things are going to be used. But if you're able to use AI in a way where it gets games quicker out the door while still involving those creative processes, that's a way you can potentially get around what we're dealing with right now, which is tons of layoffs, somewhat being connected to the long amount of time it takes to make video games. And if you can shorten that up, there's less of profit being lost over time, and so you can then justify keeping jobs that you otherwise would have to get rid of. Again, a lot of this not only comes to the technology of AI and what it's capable of, but what the heads of the companies are going to decide and how they use it. Because they could, keep people on and allow themselves to just get more games out, or they can think, well, why don't we get games out quicker while also cutting jobs where we can to maximize profits? Because that's how these people typically think. The pro part, I forgot what I was going to say, but it can possibly get it to where I've seen it happen a lot in the movie industry, where they'll base things off of, like, what do they say? Like, not even audience viewership, but they test.
Just test screenings.
They'll not even screenings. Like before that, where they're like, "Hey, will this be a marketable thing for whoever it is we're trying to market to. No, our internal studies say no, so we'll say we're not going to go along with it. I know Barry, the TV show, very funny, good TV television program, has a actress who's trying to get in to the, I guess it was a filmmaking process, and it was cut down because, well, our metrics didn't make it think that it's going to be successful. Now, in that same vein, the use of AI may prematurely be used to say, oh, we're going to cancel this game project because our AI model isn't predicting that it's going to come out all that well. Again, these people think very cutthroaty when it comes down to trying to save money. And in the fully realized version of what AI exactly is, that could just make problems even worse rather than make them better. I can be optimistic about it, but in reality, I just don't know.
Right. I mean, optimistically, like we're just going to be able to, live in a happy medium where everybody gets paid to do the job that they want to do.
Yeah.
And if it could eliminate some of the more grueling aspects of game development of oh man, this demo went wrong. Now I have to go stare at code for 5 hours to figure out which individual line is the one breaking the game. If AI could instead be used to flag the issue, say, hey, something's wrong here. This is where it's wrong. Figure this out. Then maybe that'll help. But it's a very complicated scenario. And if you're not knee deep in actual development, it's hard for you to sort of visualize how it all works. I think a lot about production and how things are executed upon due to my experience through production, mostly through the theater stage, classical theater stage training, and all that. But it translates to film and TV fairly easily. I understand how a light works and how a microphone can kind of work in XYZ thing, and so, but game development is a whole other thing. I don't code. I'm not a visual artist in any terms or any like. I don't know what it means to draw a character and things like that. And that's where like things get kind of tricky, and you could see very quickly someone just generate something real quick and have a new character design that's worked before, and it's just a copy of that. You have to remember, AI can't, in the current state, AI cannot generate anything new. It can only imitate and alter things that it's seen in the past.
Yeah.
And very often it creates something atrocious.
Like what they're showing here with the Bleeding Edge gameplay.
Yeah.
That's because it's new, but it was terrible. But on that same note of things, that's a game that's now obviously doesn't get support. It was an online shooter.
Yeah, I remember Bleeding Edge.
But I saw some comments from a variety of sources talking about this news of people looking at that gameplay and saying, "Hey, this actually looks good. I might have enjoyed this."
Well, it was Bleeding Edge.
What?
Well, it was Bleeding Edge. So
yeah, right. I mean, but the point is, going back to the idea of bringing old games to more modern consoles. You can take games that might have just not performed well at the time, bring them forward, and they might have a big resurgence. I mean, Helldivers, for example. That's, I know it's a weird one to go to.
I would say Helldivers 1 was successful. It just wasn't. It wasn't like
what it
mainstream. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's just through the size of the game and what they were trying to do at the time. And
I'll do a better example.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings: The Third Age,
okay,
the turn-based game. See, you don't know. It's good. I guarantee you, it's good. Is it hard to get online? Yes, I have tried. It is hard. But AI can kind of, hey, well, maybe we somehow get this game to more modern players and they can play a very quality turn-based game that no one ever thinks about. Because
I guess the main thing is can we use AI to sort of polish or bandage things quicker in a way that it would just take more time for a human to do, so that the human can actually focus on the creation of the game. That's the ideal thing, is that all of the egregious parts of development are easier, and maybe we can get some things done a little faster. You and I lament all the time. We miss when we could have entire trilogies out on one game console. Can we do that with AI again, but still have the number of people that are still creating? That's a tricky balance, and the realist and even the pessimist in me says, they're the corporate money-driven executives the capitalists of the world are gonna ruin this for everybody.
I even though I don't know and I could be very optimistic for the most part, my outlook on AI is going to be, I think, a net negative when we become more fully realized. I'm hoping it's not.
We'll have to see.
But we will have to see.
We'll have to see. I mean, I think there's a solid part of us that just cannot comprehend the full capabilities of AI until we actually have it, you know? Much in the same case of like, how does somebody pre 1960 know that we can go to the moon? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.